Welcome to the Portland Culinary Podcast on Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Stephen Schaman, your host. I am so excited. Today we're going to get to hear the story of Liz Crain. I'm a big fan of Liz's. She is a huge, in my opinion, VIP in the Portland culinary world. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So excited to tell your story as it relates to your culinary journey and how you came to do all the cool things you do here in Portland and you enhance our food experience. But let's start off with the standard questions we always do in the Portland Culinary Podcast. Where were you born?
Cincinnati, Ohio, 1976.
1976.
Yeah.
And where did you go to high school?
I went to Anderson High School, public high school, large high school in the suburbs.
And what's the mascot there?
Oh, yeah.
I always ask people their mascot.
This is really wild. It is the Anderson High School Redskins. And I really was upset by that when I was in high school. I wrote an editorial for the newspaper, and people got really upset with me for saying that's racist, and can we please, I can curse on here.
If you must, yes.
I don't have to. Never
go
mind.
ahead.
Just can we please change that? So no, they haven't. So yeah.
So it's still the Redskins.
It's still the Redskins.
Well, they should change it because that's racist and
It's
awful.
racist and awful, but that sort of exists in the world still, doesn't it?
But even back in the day then, in high school, you wrote about it and protested it.
Oh, yeah, I protested a lot of things in my editorials in the newspaper.
I believe it. Okay, so high school was Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of cool stuff happened. We'll get to in a second. But 2002 is when you moved to Portland.
Yes.
You here to stay?
Oh, yeah, I love it here. I bought a house in 2006 and, yeah, put my roots down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll fill in the gaps now because it's always curious, people's geographic journey kind of informs us, who they were and kind of where shapes us. So what happened after high school?
So after high school, I applied to Vassar and got accepted, and then I deferred for a year. So they allowed me to take a year to learn a bit about myself and travel a bit. So I ended up getting a job at Yosemite National Park in concessions there. So I worked at the general store, lived in employee housing in a tent cabin, made some lifelong friends there, worked there for several months. Then I came home, did some serving and hostessing to save up money for a plane ticket to Spain, where I went there and I worked on an herb farm, a culinary herb farm.
Where in Spain? It's
in the Extremadura region, so it's about an hour and a half outside of Madrid. Cáceres, Caceres. The farm is no longer there. It was a single woman, Julia, who had it. 2 Danish boys that were helping there when I worked there as well. Really hard work. So with woofing, willing workers on organic farms, you typically work a few hours a day in exchange for a place to stay and food. And I think generally we were working 10 to 12-hour days because she was just struggling and she needed help. And
you wanted to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, what else are we going to do? We're on a really remote farm and have her struggling out there when we're not. I mean, we played a lot of card games late at night when we still had a little energy.
And did you enjoy Spain?
I did. It was magic.
That's a kind of a foreshadowing for years later you're working with John Gorham.
I know.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so high school, Yosemite, Spain, then you go to Vassar.
Then I went to Vassar, was there for 4 years, loved it. Majored in English, took a lot of different...
that's too bad. English.
What's wrong with English?
I had awful English teachers, and I didn't think I had all these weird hang-ups in my head where I can't be a writer. I don't like grammar, spelling, punctuation. I can't type. I had to overcome all that. It's like, I'll never be published. I can't be a writer.
Oh, that's too bad.
But you majored in English.
I majored in English, yep.
And now you're a writer.
Yeah.
How cool is it that years later you end up working in your own in your major? Nobody gets to do that.
I'm pretty grateful. It all worked out. It all worked out pretty well for me.
Okay, and then after Vassar, then where'd you go?
So then after Vassar, I had the travel bug in me again. I mean, always. And so I got a work visa to work in Australia. Again, real easy peasy employment. So I worked at a resort in the Great Barrier Reef doing housekeeping. Again, employee housing. Kind of these sort of felt like cinder block motels almost. Had so much fun there. And one main reason why I wanted to go there was to learn how to scuba dive, which I did. And then my work visa ran out and then went to New Zealand with a friend that I met in Australia, a nurse who I'm still friends with. I went to Vietnam with her last year. Several years older than me. We went to New Zealand and worked on different farms, woofing there.
My friend, do you know John Lovegrove?
I don't.
He's a cool personality in the Portland beer community. He's a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand.
Ah, I
If
love
you
the
ever
Kiwis.
get to hook up, meet him,
Yeah.
he's just a wonderful guy. You would love him, and he would love to tell you all about New Zealand and hear
Oh,
about your New Zealand stories.
that'd be great. Maybe he'll have some squirreled away like New Zealand dairy that he can bring out for our.
He's got
So
all
good
kinds of New
there.
Zealand stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, so what after New Zealand then where?
So then after that, I came back to Cincinnati for several months so that I could get my dive master, my scuba dive master, so that I could actually work in the field.
In Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that makes perfect sense. Because the founders of Bear Lake, they took oceanography in Boise, Idaho. So
you can do things anywhere. Those rock quarries are pretty cold and
Oh my
murky,
God.
but it's great for learning, doing rescue diving and just being in that really frigid elements. There are Cessnas in some of those quarries and all kinds of weird things down there that you'll find, like freshwater jellyfish. That's one thing.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I did not either. I thought that maybe I'd stayed up a little too late the night before. But
Okay.
yeah, so I got my dive master, and then got a job on Catalina Island, and then in between, pre cell phone and everyone connected all the time, I made my way across the country to Catalina, drove across, stayed in campsites along the way, and then I got out there. I took the ferry out there, and the wonderful and very sweet woman who owned the shop said, "Oh my goodness, I don't have a job for you anymore, and I should have contacted you. But ever since 9/11, our travel and tourism here has really plummeted. But I'll help you find something." So this is a situation where Plan A becomes B, and then Plan B is A plus because she got me a job. She connected me with the people at Cousteau's son's camp on the other end of the island. So I got to do snorkeling and night snorkels and kind of environmental learning with all kinds of grade school students there for several months.
Catalina, that is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, the kelp forests underwater there, it's like the giant redwoods of the ocean. It's just so vibrant and beautiful.
Well, Kelly McCormick, he Sushi Love Food Cart. He was a chef out at Catalina, and then Dragon's Great Brewing. Adam and Jennifer Gregory, they met on Catalina Island.
It's a magical place.
She ran the bar, and he was the deputy sheriff that came out for a bar fight, and they fell in love. So, and now they have a cool brewery out in Oregon, out in Eastern Oregon. So
I bet it's a dramatic relationship too. You have that kind of a beginning.
oh, they're wonderful. You would love their
Fiery.
beer. If you ever get to have Dragon's Gate Brewing beer, you
I'm
gotta
gonna
have
try
it.
it.
And then you can talk. You can swap Catalina stories.
I would love that.
Okay, and so then that's where you moved from Catalina to Portland.
Exactly.
What
Yep.
made you choose Portland?
I had friends that were up here, some from Yosemite, in fact, and I knew that I wanted to not do seasonal employment anymore. It's kind of exhausting. But I thought that I might want to work with kids. Anyhow, I visited Portland and just fell in love with, everything that we love about this city. The literary culture, the food and drink, just the natural beauty of it. And yeah, so moved here at the end of summer of 2002.
And when you first got here, how did you initially start paying the bills? What are some of the jobs you cobbled together?
It was really, the financial situation, job market was pretty slim. It was really hard to find work, and I didn't have a huge amount of skills. So
Not a lot of call for dive masters in Portland.
not a lot of call for dive masters. I was still thinking I wanted to work with kids, and I loved my 1 year of Montessori growing up, and Maria Montessori's kind of teachings and mission statement really is compelling to me still. But I did a little Montessori work. I worked for about a year at Montessori out near Gresham and did their after school program. So I did that. That wasn't super lucrative. I also fell back on food service, which I love. So I was waiting tables at the Portland Art Museum and doing catering with them and others. And then I also still wasn't paying the bills. So then I also got a job nannying for a young boy in Southeast. Yeah, so a lot of different, had to piece that together.
And the nanning was which eventually led to you be able to do a little bit of writing for AOL, food writing.
It is, yeah. So that woman, Jo Osgarden, she is a local writer, and she had a contract that came up again that had been kind of, um, she'd worked for them in the past, and they came back and said, "Would you like to do this kind of nightlife and restaurant coverage for us again?" She didn't want to say no, but she was too busy. So she said, "Liz, you're, English major, you like to write, you love to read, you love food. How about you do these for me and ghostwrite them? My name will be on them. You'll see if you like it. I can keep the contract." And so I really enjoyed it. It was a great entree into our food scene. I got to talk with a lot of chefs and owners and see all the restaurants and dine at them. And then eventually I got my own contract with them. I worked for them for a few years. Then I worked for Portland Tribune.
Did some
And
food
then,
writing there.
yeah, I loved those stories. They were in-season stories where I'd visit farmers all over the state and fisher people and ranchers and kind of focus on one seasonal ingredient and dig deep and into the history of that ingredient in our state and country. And
Now you love food.
I do.
You love cooking. You love food stories.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's some of your first earliest memories of cooking? Do you have one?
I have a lot. Yeah. So I always have liked to create things in the kitchen, but one thing that I remember is my grandma was a great cook, and later in her life she was a travel agent, and we had some good Chinese restaurants in Cincinnati growing up that we went to. So I was over at her place. She had some really yummy chicken stock and some good farm fresh eggs in the fridge, and she said, "Oh, how about we make egg drop soup?"
About how old were you roughly?
I'm thinking I'm always bad at this, but I'm going to say 3 to 4.
Okay, so around kindergarten age, maybe a little younger.
Yeah. And yeah, so just, cracked an egg in a bowl, whisked it up with a fork. Oh, I mean, mixed it up with a fork because you wouldn't whisk with a fork. You would whisk with a whisk. And yeah, and then just put it into the like simmering soup, and it's, you know how beautiful that is. It looks like a undersea creature kind of. And then you think, "Oh my gosh, I made this."
And
so
then you
easy.
and then you get to eat it.
And you get to eat it, and it's such a good combo. I still like that combo to this day. A little egg and a little homemade chicken broth. It's delicious.
All right, so you come on my personal radar when I'm buying. I'm going to somehow figure out this food thing. I'm going to somehow figure out a way to be involved. And I bought your Food Lover's Guide to Portland.
Oh, I love that.
Which I absolutely loved. It came out in 2010, your first book.
Yeah.
So tell me the story how you ended up with publishing your first book, or having your publisher publish your first book, and having this book come out.
So after a few years of full-time freelance food writing, mostly some other types of writing, I wanted to bring back the literary world into my work. So I kind of did a little research on local publishing houses, and top of my list was Hawthorne Books. I thought I'd really like to get to know these people and maybe do an internship. So I got an internship there, summer 2008, and one of my primary duties was going through the slush pile, so all of the unsolicited manuscripts that a publishing house gets. And quite frankly, they just were not very good. And what that did in my mind for my food writing was I thought I should write a book about Portland food. We had a couple at that point, but I thought with all of the research that I'd done and all these stories for the Portland Tribune, there was a book at the time, I mean, it's still out, by Katie Calcott, Food Lover's Guide to Seattle, that I loved, that Sasquatch Books in Seattle published, and that I used. So I just contacted Gary Luke, the publisher of Sasquatch Books, and said, "I really love this book. How about a Portland one? I'd love to write it if you would, be interested in that and would consider me." I've never written a book, of course. And he said, "Yeah, let's do that." So we did it.
Fantastic. And then your second edition, you kind of updated it slightly.
Yeah, so that one, Hawthorne Books took over, and that one published in 2014. So it's got a brand new redesign by Adam McIsaac, and a lot of closures and openings, mostly openings, honestly, between the two editions. And So that was fun to put together too.
That came out in 2014.
That came out in 2014.
Still available. People can get it at Powell's. Everywhere books are sold.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't own it, I encourage them to go buy it, read it, and enjoy it. Lots of great stuff in there.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like the first time you held a book you wrote?
It's pretty emotional. I mean, I think that, but I think a lot of, there's just so much work that goes into these collaborations. And each of my books has taken 1.5 to 3+ years. They just take a long time. So especially, Food Lover's Guide to Portland, I did that all on my own. So I did all the photography, all of the writing, all of the compiling, all of the research. And, I had my first mild panic attack during that book, and I chopped off the end of one of my fingers during that book, and just a lot of things went into it. So it was a proud moment, and got a little teary-eyed for sure.
So what'd you do when you finished the book and shipped the manuscript off? Because that's always a big deal.
Yeah.
People don't, it's like, I'm done. It's off to the final version, off to the publisher.
Yeah, and it takes so much time because you think, oh, this is the final version. Oh no, oh no, okay. Yeah. So when I finally turned in the last bit of the manuscript, the finalized one, I went to Eat Oyster Bar in North Portland, and I got myself a platter of a dozen oysters, raw oysters, and a bottle of bubbly with my friend, and I toasted to all of that. And it was delicious and fun. And oysters and bubbly, I mean, that's just when I think of celebration food,
that works.
Kind of.
And then, so that's when the manuscript went off. What did you do when you finally got it, your published book, you held it in your hands?
It was just great. I was just very proud of it. And it's just nice to see, it's a dig deep into food culture book. So it's not a compilation of all different restaurants. It's really all of these farmers and fisher people and ranchers who are really making our food scene here. So it felt nice to see all of them gathered in one book all together. And I was happy.
Okay, so I got my early release copy of my first book. It got UPS to me.
Yeah.
I opened it up. I didn't know what I would feel. And then when I held it, I cried. Mm-hmm. Did you cry when you held your first?
Oh, yeah. I'm a crier. Yeah, for sure. I get teary-eyed on a daily basis.
Okay, and then so you did first and second edition of Food Lover's Guide to Portland, and those were books. And then you wrote a cookbook with John Gorham.
I know. How lucky am I?
Incredible. He's a wonderful guy. I love him and Renee. Fantastic people. Great chef. Great human beings. Toro Bravo. This is a absolutely stunningly beautiful book.
Thanks.
I love culinary photos, good culinary photos. They're just beautiful. What was it like to put this book together with John?
It was great. So I'd been a longtime admirer of his food and his whole ethics, and I just decided after Food Lovers that I wanted to forge ahead and do a cookbook, and he was my number one choice, and he'd been wanting to do one as well.
So let me guess, just like with your other book, you shot him off an email and he said yes?
It's true. That's how it worked. Modern day woman sending out emails right and left. Yeah. So yeah, he'd been thinking about it for a while, but of course he's so busy that, he hadn't made it happen. But yeah, we got to do that book with the great editorial and design team at McSweeney's, and we got to go to Madrid and Barcelona researching the book, and then when it was all said and done, we did a proper book tour where we went to New York and DC and Baltimore, and John did Splendid Table, and every part of that project was just really kind of dreamy to me.
Oh, that's awesome. I own a couple different domains related to cookbooks. When I get by the domain, it's a bit of an addiction for me.
Okay.
You might inspire me to actually pursue one of them. Okay. And then the next cookbook you came out, Hello, My Name is Tasty.
Yeah.
Which is another one of John's amazing restaurants.
Yeah, Tasty and Sons, Tasty and Alder.
Yeah, just fantastic. Again, beautiful photos. I just love your writing style. You put little bits of story in there in addition to recipes.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. This book came out just now, 2017.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just came out a couple months ago. And Oprah just put it in her magazine and said she really likes it. So
yes, I saw your Facebook post.
Very happy about that.
I was so happy for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I love that one. I cook from it all the time, even though people think, oh, that's strange, you cook from your own cookbook. Like, yeah, I can't remember all of the amounts and every single step.
Okay, and then this is not a food book, but still, you grow your own. This is a
Hmm.
cannabis book
Yeah.
that you can't get more Portland than cannabis.
Yeah, well, it's legal now and for the past couple years. So, yeah, with Tin House, a publishing house local publishing house that I also really admire, got to work with them on that and the great team at Raven Grass. So, we put together a kind of how to grow at home. The subtitle is Understanding, Cultivating, and Enjoying Cannabis. So, all three of those things are covered in it.
Fantastic.
Pretty
Okay,
good.
and now you are an author. In addition to being an author and writing books, and we'll talk about the books you're going to be working on next in a minute, but you also do the Portland Fermentation Festival.
Hmm.
Happens every year, September or October.
Yep.
We did a separate Portland Culinary podcast episode all about that festival. But if someone's listening to this and it's, summer of 2019, they just can go online and look and find out when it's happening.
Summer of 2019. That's going to be a good summer.
It's going to be a great summer. Okay, so I just want to mention, because not only are you a food writer and a food author, but you are one of the people that makes the magic happen at the Portland Fermentation Festival,
Yeah.
which is a lot of fun. Okay, so you've
Thank
got
you.
2 cookbooks that you're thinking of doing and another book. Talk to me about these three new projects.
Yeah, so next projects, I am starting to have meetings for those. So I always want to work with John Gorham forever and always. So as long as he keeps opening restaurants, we'll keep doing cookbooks. Or he doesn't even have to. We could do other things. But we're talking about Mediterranean Exploration Company and Shalom Y'all doing a cookbook for those restaurants. And we're just meeting this week, so we haven't.
So something could come of that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's going to be the next one. And then Nat West of Reverend Nat's Hard Cidery, we're talking about doing a book together, lots of ideas.
I'm
We're
a huge
meeting.
fan of his.
Yeah.
I love him. He's fantastic.
He really is, yeah. So we're meeting tomorrow night. Thursday night. Anyway, so him, and then pressure cooker cookbook. I love my pressure cookers, and I think that there's kind of a lack of good recipe writing out there for them. So kind of playing around with what that cookbook would look like. And they're also, honestly, just a lot of them are pretty cookie cutter, and just the recipes aren't that interesting. My favorite is not a solely pressure cooker book, but it's Mater Joffrey's Quick and Easy Indian. I think there may be 8 or 9 pressure cooker recipes in it, but yeah, so those 3. And then my novel I'd like to finish, but that's, I've been saying that for years, and this hopefully will be the time when I do.
Okay, those all sound awesome, and when they
Thanks.
come out, I will help promote them. I love them. So here's a question for you: what's it take to be a writer?
I think tenacity and really, I think hopefully some solid work ethic, because you don't have anyone else cracking the whip for you all the time. You really need to stay on top of things, but also thick skin, a lot of rejection. But I don't know. There's so many different types of writers. Those are 2 things, I think. Just really good work ethic and a thick skin.
Okay, and then a little bit different take, a little spin on it. What does it take to be a food writer?
I think like a lust for life and a wide and varied appetite, and be that for food and drink itself, but also for travel and new experiences. And I think that you should have an open heart and open mind, ready for new experiences to inform you. I think that's helpful. I don't think it's required, but those are the food writers that I gravitate towards.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of are living the dream. You live in Portland. You're at about food. You actually majored in English. So a lot of people like, oh my gosh, I want to get to do what Liz does.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for someone that wants to become a writer?
It's really complicated. Right.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can think about what it means to be a writer and how to get to be a writer and how to, what that career would look like for you. But really just, pen to paper,
Just
fingers
right.
on the keyboard,
Just right.
typewriter, whatever your medium, however you're going to do it. Just get those words out there and start doing it. And then you can figure out, if you enjoy it and if it's something worthwhile, and then you can move into the how, if you want to share it with people. But initially, think less about what it means to be and what why you want to be a writer and just start being one and
Yeah,
seeing
'cause
how that feels.
writers tend to be, not always, but tend to be a little bit more introspective, maybe, a little bit different at that personality. And they do, you're right, they spend a lot of time thinking about being a writer instead of writing.
Yeah.
And I think you're completely right. Just write. It's like, how to become a writer? You write words. That's it.
Yeah.
A writer's someone that writes words.
Yeah. You just have to, do it and do it and do it and do it again.
Well, Liz, it's been a delight to have you on the Portland Culinary Podcast. I love all the wonderful stuff that you bring to the great stew that is the Portland food scene.
Likewise, right back at you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of yours. I always look forward to, okay, you're writing another book. Yay, that's fantastic. And again, I just want to emphasize, if people do not yet have the Food Lover's Guide to Portland, they need to get that. And then if you love cookbooks, they can't go wrong with Hello, My Name is Tasty and the Toro Bravo Cookbook. Both are beautiful, great recipes, great stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been awesome to have you. Have yourself a great day. Cheers.
You too. Cheers to you.